We've got a little bit of presentation we're going to do and then some conversation. The topic today is the changes in the Family Law Act regarding First Nations families. Before going further, I'd like to acknowledge traditional owners of country throughout Australia. We recognise the continued connection to land, water and communities and pay our respects to elders past, present and to emerging leaders and emerging mediators as well. And I come to you today from the lands of the Gunai-Kurnai people in Victoria. And of course, it's National Reconciliation Week and the referendum, the no vote, hangs still heavily over those of us who support movement towards recognition of the Uluru Statement of the Heart. But the work continues and it will continue because it has to. So the agenda for today is welcomes. We're just going to look at some of the changes in the Family Law Act and also some of the services that are available. But I have a guest with us today. Geri is a Family Dispute Resolution Practitioner in the Family Relationship Centre at Centrecare. Would you like to say hello, Geri, and introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. As Joanne said, I'm at the Townsville Family Dispute Resolution Centre with Centrecare. Domestic violence is my background, and that's come in helpful with working with families in the mediation process.
Definitely, yeah. And I think part of your heritage is around down in the Glasshouse Mountains sort of area in Queensland.
Yeah, down that way, the Waka Waka and Cabby clans, and to some extent there's some cultural heritage there because of my nana being in the stolen generation. But there's still a connection there.
Yeah, thank you. And what country are you on today?
The Walka Walkabat and Bindal.
Wonderful, thank you. And if those here present today if you'd like to use the chat to introduce yourselves and let us know where you are and what country you're on, that would be fabulous. Geri's going to be chiming in and contributing as we go and then be part of the discussion once we get going. As I said, please feel free to share in the chat where you're coming from and what country you're on if you know it, and if you don't, it's fun to learn it. So one of the changes that's happened in the Family Law Act that have come in on the 6th of May from amendments that were made was the change to the definition of relative for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. It's in the definitions part of the Act, and it says for an Aboriginal child or a Torres Strait Islander child, a person who, in accordance with the child's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander culture, including but not limited to any kinship systems of that culture, is related to the child. I suppose the questions I have, how are we going to understand this and when do we need to know this? And then, so we've got the overlay that children may have various elements of heritage, and also they may, as in Geri's case, have stolen generation and loss of knowledge about their family and culture. So we can talk a little bit more towards the end about what this means and what it can mean for us, for those of us that are working within the family law system and perhaps to an extent in the family violence child protection system as well. Maybe gather your thoughts around that, because it would be lovely to hear. The other changes were regarding the best interest of the child. So has changed for all children. So what has come into effect, there used to be 16 factors, 17 if you take into account Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children. It's now condensed down to 6 or 7 if the child is Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander heritage. What we're looking at now in the family law system is what arrangements would promote safety, including safety from being subjected to or exposed to family violence, abuse, neglect or other harm of the child, and each person who has care of the child, whether the person has parental responsibility for the child or not. This is, I think, a very good change. Any views expressed by the child, the developmental, psychological, emotional and cultural needs of the child, the capacity of each person who has or is proposed to have parental responsibilities of the child to provide for that, developmental, psychological, emotional and cultural needs, and the benefit to the child of being able to have a relationship with the child's parents and other people who are significant to the child where it's safe to do. So the focus now is very much looking at safety first and always, but also the importance of these relationships. And finally, anything else that's to the particular circumstances of that child. These are the general considerations. And it says that consideration of the matters set out in paragraph 2A, which were those ones there, the court has to consider any history of family violence, abuse or neglect involving a child or a person caring for the child, and any family violence orders that apply or have applied to the child or the member of the child's family. So we're really looking at that safety perspective. And Geri, I don't know if you'd like to contribute to that, because I know you've got a really strong background in safety and family violence.
Yeah, regarding the safety, obviously that's paramount. And I think for some families, it could be a little bit tricky in terms of multiple family members may not be safe. But again, as a practice, I think that's about then assessing their roles. What does that look like, as well as providing that connection to their heritage? And that's going to be sometimes thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we shouldn't be just thinking in blanket, no contact or unsupervised contact. It might be that it's fine if they're in a group situation, or it might be fine sometimes and not other times. So if there's, mental health or other issues that cycle. Yeah. So I guess the invitation is to take a more detailed and more nuanced approach in really looking at this in consultation with the family and with the child's view, if it's possible. So what we're really here to look at is, what are these additional elements for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children? There's also a subsection 3 to this section 60cc. So, and it's around the child's right to enjoy culture. So it's all of the other things still apply for those children. But in addition, the child's right to enjoy the child's Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islander culture by having the support, opportunity and encouragement necessary to connect with and maintain their connection with members of their family and with their community, culture, country and language. So it's actually a lot in there. To explore the full extent of that child's culture, consistent with the child's age and developmental level, and the child's view, and to develop a positive appreciation of that culture. From a point of view, that's going to be an interesting one of how is that positive appreciation supported? So certainly not through racism or negative comments or language around it for the child, but perhaps in our discussion we can look at some other strategies that might help to support that.
I think, Joanne, some parents may have to be open to being more educated on the heritage and the connection. If you ask some parents, what's your cultural heritage, and they go Australian, and that's as far as they go.
Yeah.
So for them, they may not understand the importance of that.
No, absolutely. And often maybe one parent is of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander heritage, the child is, but the other parent isn't. It may not have been a major factor in their relationship early on, but now that the child's there, there's this family that want to teach them and that want them to be part of it. And the final element, 3B, is the likely impact of any proposed parenting order, and there's a bit of jargon, will have on that right. So ultimately, how the rights of the child to have that connection with culture, community and so on protected. Just a couple more slides and then we'll drop that and we can have a bit more of a conversation. For anyone who's not aware of family dispute resolution, it helps families to negotiate resolution for parenting disputes regarding care arrangements for children and property settlement agreements following separation. Once agreements are reached, then they can, if they need to, they can have a parenting plan or consent orders. If there's things like family violence orders or other things, it might be necessary to have those formal documents, and in other cases it's not. There are some First Nations people working in mainstream FDR services, and such as Geri, and more being trained, but Some of the research has shown that for some people, they do find it culturally unsafe, that there's a lack of understanding. I think today, particularly in Reconciliation Week, is a real call out for non-Indigenous practitioners to really look at how can we educate ourselves more about some of these aspects, who could be a family member if they're not related by blood, for example, in your area. And also connecting with the local landowners or people that might be able to guide you. And I'm sure that in the discussion there might be some other strategies that people have used or some suggestions of what we could use. Now, the First Nations practitioners I know are usually pretty heavily booked out. I'm not sure if you're noticing any popularity there, Geri. What's it like up in North Queensland?
I think there isn't a huge Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clientele who seek mediation. I think some would seek the guidance from their elders and other community members. So obviously, yes, we do get clients of that heritage, but not probably as high as you would think.
No, and that's what the data shows, of heavily underrepresented. However, there's some real opportunities. So the Attorney General's Department have recognised that need, and they've got a program. It started in 2022 with consultation and moving through. There's 9 Aboriginal community controlled organisations who've been funded to train FDR practitioners and establish services, and those that are already up and running have had a steady interest. There's additional considerations that need to be made when a service is working exclusively within a smaller community, and particularly around where there are connections and kinship, so conflict of interest need to be dealt with in an appropriate way. Because in general services, we say, oh, if we know them, we're not going to mediate, but they may know everyone. So it's around discussion, disclosure, and deciding what's going to be appropriate or not. And of course, it doesn't cover all over the country. Another exciting area is with the family group conferencing. For anyone who's not aware, it's a really inclusive and restorative approach to family-led decision making, and it involves family members making a plan for the care and welfare of the child or the young person. It's often done in the context of child protection, so mostly it's happening in New South Wales. There is a video on the FACTS website that gives some more information, but we have had a number of our First Nations students that are training in both family group conferencing and FDR. And rather than just having mediation between the parents, they're bringing together the whole family to provide a much more culturally appropriate style of decision making. The difference with family group conferencing is that often the children will be there present during the process. So that makes it's again a departure from what normally happens in family dispute resolution, where the children, if they are actually involved, will be talking with usually a different person not present during actual negotiations. And certainly that's what happens in the family court if they do go there. So really what I'd like to do now is drop the slides and start maybe having a bit more of a conversation about some of these points, and it'll give us an opportunity for people to introduce yourselves as well. And certainly you might, if you've got any questions for Geri or for others involved. The big points that I was hoping that we could discuss is around that first point of what difference will changing the definition of members of the families make for children who have Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander heritage. That cultural safety I touched on. So how can non-Indigenous FDRPs and other professionals make our services more culturally safe? Geri mentioned that people go to maybe talk with their elders, but perhaps the elders aren't aware of some of the changes that have happened in terms of combination of the legal system and the family violence system. And we know that we do have a significant issue with intergenerational trauma and the stolen generations, and sometimes there is support needed. And then connection. What does connection to family, community, culture, and country and language look like? And particularly when there are safety concerns, as you mentioned. And We can't ignore the child protection issue. There are a lot of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children who are in out of home care, and sometimes the parental responsibility has been removed from their families. What are the obligations of the organisations or individuals that have got parental responsibility in terms of helping those children to connect and appreciate their culture? And of course, does this concept of family group conferencing belong in family law and bringing children together? So I know that's a lot of bit, and I don't think I mentioned this is being recorded. So if you're not comfortable with having your photo on there, feel free to contribute but not turn your video camera on. But if you are comfortable, please turn your video on and we can have a conversation.
Thank you so much, Joanne and Geri. Thank you so much for your insights. And I guess, yeah, and really lovely to hear that you did have some connection to Sherbrooke, which is quite an incredible community I was part of for quite some time a few years ago.
Oh, and Emil, feel free to introduce yourself if you would like to.
Yeah, so I'm Emil here. Originally, I'm in Brisbane here, but as you can hear from the accent, I speak a few languages. Originally from Rwanda and was raised up all over Africa. And in Brisbane-wise, I run a small mediation practice and have an interest in incorporating cultures and creating pathways where minority voices and silent voices can feel included and be part of those processes. So yeah, I run a mediation called Comprehensive Mediation Services in Brisbane here. I guess my question and my insights are around connection to family, connection to culture, and being aware of many layers and different meaning to families that our local Indigenous communities and family have. So I was quite curious to understand in situations where I had a situation where we had a client from the country and another client who came from another country. And there were each culture had different protocols and different ways of responding to care arrangements following a separation. So I was quite curious, Geri, to understand your insights on where there is those competing interests between clients. What will be your golden tips and advice on coming down to understanding what that connection would look like for two different Indigenous families, which may have different protocols and ways of being and ways of resolving conflict?
I personally think that it's being curious. So curious of what does that look like? For example, Party A's family, asking those questions to both parties. I'm curious, what does women's business look like for your cultural background and your clan and that, and then asking the other party as well and seeing if there are some similarities and yep, okay, that might be agreed on, but if there's some differences, how do you then incorporate that where it is still in the best interest of the child, especially just the child, to be able to have that ability to have both sides of their culture be shared and expressed and that. So I would be talking to each parent and asking them, what does it look like for you? In terms of the cultures and areas and that, as mentioned, there's some similarities, but other times there can be some big differences and not assuming things. We go to uni and we get told that Aboriginal Torres Strait people, Islander people might be nervous of looking people in the eyes. But that doesn't mean that's every Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander person. So, yeah, again, that being curious and asking each party to share what their traditions are.
Yeah, that's great advice, Geri. I think sometimes people are nervous about asking questions. What would your response to be with that if people are worried about asking the right questions?
I think if it's put forward as in this is to support you, or acknowledging I'm not aware of your tradition, not only am I interested to know this, but again, how is it going to help with your child? I think a lot of people take it as a compliment if someone's asking more questions than again assuming.
Yeah. I think that's great advice, and it's better, much better to ask questions than assume. Yeah. And we need to remember, I've got the map of country. There's so many different areas in Australia that would have different traditions and approaches. So even if you do know something about one particular group where you grew up or you've had connections, you still need to ask. You need to ask because you're going to have people that are from different backgrounds. Yeah. Cynthia, did you have any questions or comments?
I like what Geri said before there about what you raised there, Emil. I lived in Papua New Guinea for 6 years, and it was really interesting because there's so many different. And of course, the lower part of Papua New Guinea just about touches Australia, but there was Highlanders, and there was Eastern Highlanders and Western Highlanders, and there was the coastal people. There was 700 different dialects that were spoken up there. Pidgin English was one of the main ones, but a lot of their traditions were very different depending on where they came from. When I was up there back in the day, it was very more civilized around the coastal areas, but up in the highlands, when you'd go up to one of the stations up there, you could be driving through bows and arrows being flown at people. So it's very different wherever you're at. Yeah, and I just thought it's very good to bring that into context when you're dealing with the different. I think one of the Aboriginal students that I'm having a lot to do with now, she said that it's quite different in different areas of Australia, maybe down in Sydney as opposed to what's happening somewhere else in Central. So yeah, good point.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't want to say anything. I just wanted to comment. I just thought I'd comment on that. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested in this because I've had a lot to do with Aboriginal people in the past in my social services and now teaching and training. So it's really good. I love it.
No, wonderful. Thank you, Cynthia. And for anyone who doesn't know Cynthia, she's one of the trainers at Mediation Institute. You brought up something there, Cynthia, with regards to language. When English is a second or third language in some of the more regional parts of Australia, that certainly can be a barrier for practitioners for services. So I wonder if anyone's got any thoughts about strategies such as partnering or working with organisations if they do want assistance to help deal with that, because you probably aren't going to be able to call up the interpreter service and get the right help. So Emil, I think you're working with, and Geri, you're working with a number of different people with a lot of different ethnic backgrounds. Have you done any work with their community members as well, or it's mainly separate from the community?
We do mediation in Mount Isa as well, and that's got the Aboriginal high numbers as well in Mount Isa, but also some other groups from cultural different backgrounds. And that, I guess, for us, it would be trying to make contact with the local coloured background immigration services or that to get that support, and also looking at assessing, is it better for a male practitioner or a female practitioner working with a variety of different cultures. And we may not necessarily know that from the start, but if we have that catch up with the initial appointment, when we're doing the intake and that, from there, that's where we might assess that for whatever reason, it would be best for a male or female practitioner.
Yeah, that's another great consideration to raise, because gender is relevant to culture for many First Nations people, and it's arrogance to say I'm the professional and you work with me regardless of that, whether it's First Nations or people from another background around the world. It's really not very respectful, is it? It's a wonderful point. Emil?
And I think, Geri, what you said is absolutely perfect. And quite often, families and people of cultures will tell if you're being genuine or if you're there to tick the boxes. And that's something which I have noted, having worked in the First Nations community and work with our current community, natural ways of resolving conflict. And this involves family dispute. And I think there's a space before you engage to, I guess, as supposed to do some research and understand their natural ways. What is it that is natural for them that I may need to employ in my service? And that can be are reflected in how you communicate those initial contacts, whether if you are engaging with a faith-based family, is it necessary to make a contact with a local pastor or a local imam? Is it important to bring in a respected elder? I guess quite often, and correct me if I'm wrong, Geri, for clients or individuals to make a contact with a mainstream service, they usually would have gone through multiple layers, whether that is through their uncles, whether that is through their families, whether that is through their local groups they are part of. And by the time they reach myself as an independent providing a service which is pro-Western style, understanding that people would have gone through those layers, and perhaps you are the last person who will deliver and facilitate a pathway forward where practical. So I think a real need to sit into that sense of curiosity. What are the natural flaws, ways, and something which I would be keen to hear from you, Geri, as well, it's the importance of meaning and language. And in certain languages and certain cultures, particular phrases do not have that direct translation. Words such as impartial, neutrality may not have a similar weight as it would when you are engaging with a particular demographic. And I think a lot of homework usually helps, but creating alliance within Queensland here, we do have quite a lot of networks and initiatives that are there to build those bridges of trust. And I think as practitioners, being aware of what those resources in my area and how can we build relationships beforehand and how can we contribute, and quite often going there at a time when you need their service or engagement, quite often that creates a lot of issues simply because a lot of our communities, a lot of our families are driven by relationships and trust. If you have never built a relationship, if you've never built continuous efforts to build trust, it quite often becomes really challenging to get good outcomes for families and good outcomes for kids. I guess those are some insights and tips, having worked in both communities. But I'll be quite curious, Geri, to your comments on the importance of language and meaning and symbols. Have run processes where we had a yarning circle format to comply, respect culture and respect tradition. And I guess I'm quite curious, any tips around navigating, understanding meaning and ensure the language we use aligns with the language that will be understood by those whom we're trying to serve.
Yeah, the bigger picture of things is if you're working in more of a mainstream, there's going to be mainstream then interventions that tend to be noted. And for some people, yep, okay, whoever being involved in doing changeovers might be fine, but for others that could look like that's involvement of the government. And knowing that Aboriginal history and Torres Strait Islander history with the government wasn't necessarily the most positive. When we're trying to help problem solve with our clients, still linking it back to the language of what is that safe space, what will make everyone feel comfortable, and maybe even asking what is the history with this place or that. Because if we are recommending or suggesting some interventions or, like I said, of problem solving, we don't know that background and that meaning for that client. And especially if there are any client, but also Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander client, if their history is child safety, there's going to be a lot more trauma involved there. But even the difference of the Townsville mediation service to the Mount Isa, the workers, everything, it's although we're one team, we are still in a way a different mob because they are working primarily with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families out there. So the way they talk, it is different to the way we talk. And no doubt their approach of how to do things will still be different. They don't have contact centres or visitation centres in Mount Isa. So they wouldn't probably more naturally look at who are the safe kinship people to be involved with this. And I would say, although we do that here, it's not as prominent. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a fabulous point to raise, Geri, because the child supervision, where there have been concerns in the past, and supervised contact it's very limited for people anywhere, but much worse in regional and remote areas. Yeah, how can those kinship networks be brought to bear to provide that contact for the child if they want it in a safe way? Very helpful.
I need to note, sorry, too, Joanne, I'm a guest in that, but I'm not a representative of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people.
No, we please accept that was
No, I have had where someone, do you go hunting for your food? And serious, and I'm like, I'm scared of geckos. I'm not going out hunting anything.
Oh my goodness, yes. Hopefully, yeah, it's a bit sad. I laugh, but it's sad that would be asked questions like that. But anyway, at least it's better to be able to correct people. Yes, we've got maybe about 15 minutes left, so maybe we could look at, in an ideal world, if we had the resources, we had the ability to guide programs and approaches, what could be different, what could be better for First Nations children in terms of these rights to be connected. And I'm particularly thinking of those that are in out-of-home care, but others might be thinking of other things. Any thoughts on that, Geri, or anyone else, if you feel like using the chat? You had a magic wand.
I'm happy for someone else to say something.
Yeah, we've got, I did notice in the chat, Anita, who's one of our guests working in the homelessness services. Anita, I'm not sure if you're able to turn your mic on. But yeah, there's definitely intersections between family law and safety and homelessness, because we know that a lot of homelessness results from family relationship breakdown and then the crisis that's going on with home accommodations. And I think the thing I'm getting out of your comments is the importance of intersectionality, so connecting up these various silos that are trying to help people. And Emil, you referred to it as well, of all of the pathways and what people have done before they appear to us as a professional. Oh, we're going to help you to sort this out. So connections.
Importance of workers or mediators in cases of not just being educated from a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, that there is different layers. Someone's Aboriginal doesn't mean they're full blood, but again, of internally what that means for someone. And again, there's a potential that there is a lot of trauma behind things. For myself, I acknowledge that I'm not dark skin, so not everyone would necessarily know identify as Aboriginal. So I do have some white privilege that I have in society, and I have to acknowledge that when working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. But I also have to acknowledge that not always will they even want to work with me, because they might have concern about confidentiality, or that potentially it's not a woman's business if I'm working with Aboriginal male. Not always is that the case, but for some.
Yeah.
And that culture, and that is an everyday lived experience.
Yeah. No, very good point to raise. Yeah, there's not a skin chart to know whether someone's Aboriginal or enough. It's around connections and family. And so that, even I suppose, talking about things like that is really important, because in a group I run, someone asked a question that was really inappropriate about almost expecting someone to prove that she was Aboriginal. Like, there's no need to prove anything. So yeah, very, very good point. So there's a number, there's directories of Aboriginal organisations. There's a number of Aboriginal leaders that are providing services and support to educate ourselves One of the really prominent ones, hi Tracy, that I'm aware of is Evolve Communities, and they've got an allyship program. They won Telstra Best of Business Awards this year for National Building of Communities organisation. I've dropped their LinkedIn page in there, so if you're not aware of Evolve Communities, and if others on the call are aware of other organisations that perhaps you could reach out to me, it's better to contact people that have this as their business rather than expecting your Aboriginal friends or acquaintances to be ambassadors if that's not a role they've chosen. So yeah, and welcome, Tracy. I know you've missed most of the session, but if you had any, I'm sure you're aware of the changes to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander definitions for family and the additional best interest factor. Did you have any comments or questions you want to share? And feel free to introduce yourself as well.
Yes, apologies, Joanne. I had a session with clients that went a little bit longer than intended, but yeah, I wanted to jump in because I work in the northwest of WA and I work with a lot of First Nations people and have for many years. So this is something that I've been really excited to see evolving, and with I'm sure Joanne's sort of shared probably about the FDR Mediation, First Nations FDR project. I believe there's been more funding granted. So I've had conversations with a couple of the agencies that have the funding. Super, super positive. They've got some big challenges there, but fingers crossed that the three agencies I've spoken to, two especially, are very open to embracing information and support and that sort of things. I think the changes to the Family Law Act in regards to this, it just complements the thing, and it needs to be done because traditional FDR is not appropriate for First Nations. Well, not everybody anyway, especially the area that I work in. It's a whole different world of family.
A lot more traditional up there.
And we need to respect that and work to support them and get the really good outcomes for them. So, yeah. Still evolving, and I'm sure there's going to be lots of hit and misses, but yeah, I'm very excited to follow the journey of it all. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Sorry, I missed it all. Joanne, can you share the recording with me?
Yeah, I'm going to put it on the Mediation Institute YouTube channel, so this one would be a public one. Avil, yep, would you like to, whether you're able to turn on? Yep. And there's a question from Jody as well to that.
Hi, I really was intrigued with the issue of language and symbols and how we best prepare ourselves to be involved in a mediation where there are those differences in cultural understanding and awareness. And I've tried to navigate across different community experiences from both traditional to urban, and it does vary, and some people don't want to work with blonde, blue-eyed. They just, and that's fine. There is no judgment in that. And Geri's raised that, and that's clear. But Emile raised that issue of how to learn to communicate. And there was something that I found invaluable just recently, and it's the blurred borders. I don't know if you can see.
It's a bit blurred.
Yeah, it's a whole series of cards, and the cards help me work with the language that I don't have, depending on which group that I'm in. So we might go, what makes you happy? What makes you hopeful? And you flick through, and it helps them work with something that's not me, and that's got symbols in here. It's got diagrams that suit their level of understanding, and it has been just an invaluable resource. And I don't just use it with my Indigenous clients. I use it with my multicultural clients as well. And sometimes I use it with clients who have extraordinary difficulty in being able to verbalize what they want to say. And so it's just become a little tool that I've borrowed from Blurred Borders that I've started to find very useful, particularly with these changes that have come in. I can now focus on some of the cards that deal with best interests so that culturally they get an understanding of what that means in the mainstream sense, and then how to apply it into their environment.
Oh, that's wonderful, April. Thank you for sharing that resource. And I've put a link into the chat. It looks like that's been developed by Legal Aid W as a tool. Excellent. And any other resources and things that people are aware of, feel free to drop into the chat, and we'll add those below the video link for people that want to follow up. I did drop in some research that's been done recently, in part funded by the Mediator Standards Board, on First Nations approach to peace building and peacemaking, gathering food for thought, which basically says we don't know a lot and we need to do some more research. And also the evolved communities. Just Jody, you'd asked a question about, oh, thank you. Yes, you can.
Hi.
You can use your voice. Love you all.
Oh yeah, I've put the question in the chat. I'm actually just curious, in a physical sense, the mediations that you do, Geri, we're trained just to have maybe someone has one support person and the party is the only one that speaks. Does it look completely different when you do it? Do people bring their family and then everyone wants to have a chance? And how do you deal with that? How do you manage that?
We at this stage, don't have that. I can see the benefit, but in terms of the mediator having to manage so many people, it's a lot of juggling. But even with support people, we would be still assessing if they're going to help the process or hinder it. But where possible, we would be assessing if they need that one person, that two people, or who is that support person in terms of making the decisions. That's where mainstream can make it harder, because in general, we're saying both parents are the decision making, but in some cultures, it could be grandma making those decisions. And automatically, we do go to you're the parents, you parent. Yeah. So we even tried to, originally we started to develop an information session for non-parent caregivers, and we did get stuck. Me saying, yes, but it would be disrespectful for the parents not necessarily to be taking on board what the elder's saying.
Exactly.
And then the other worker was like, yes, but family court's saying this, which is a bit different now, but also it's the parents in the end of the day that make the decisions. Yeah, I haven't run with multiple people in the same room like that. I'll clap for everyone who can do that, but in the same time, we wouldn't be saying we couldn't do that. We would just be basic at assessing the individual's cases.
Yeah. And that's probably the other thing I was saying. Otherwise, if you did do that, how long are these sessions going for? Because it could take days if everyone.
Yeah. So look, the family group conference model definitely does that, and it's evolved out of Maori communities in New Zealand, and some relate in New South Wales. I think they're doing a little bit of work with that, and certainly some of these new First Nations organisations will, but it is a more costly and extensive process because they need to do intakes with all of the people involved. I've had conversations with the Attorney General's practitioner registration unit, and there's no barrier to us doing the work in that way, other than it's scary as all hell, and resources and just capacity to do that. But I think we're going to be seeing over the next few years a lot more of those sorts of models coming through. And I think, as Geri said right in the beginning, unless people are involved in the family law system, they'll go to the elders or whoever and work something out. And that may not reflect the best interest of the child factors in the family law system, but they're not interacting with it. The area that we really need to look at is where they are caught up in the legal system in one way or another, and if there is that intersection, how can we as professionals support those families and particularly those children not to lose their connections that we know is valuable, and we know cause such devastation to all of the stolen generations that have gone before.
If I might just add, I'm seeing some changes to the family law practitioners who are starting to appreciate the aspect of the subtle, not so much subtle, but it's like the court has widened its ambit to consider those other people other than the parents. So although you say that it's parents that are making decisions, because of the way the arguments can be structured in the court now with the new changes, it is quite possible now to actually advance, and particularly with the increased emphasis on those Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander provisions, to carve the support of child safety services. There's more efficient systems to bring them together. There's more documentation that can advance any of those negotiations that require the grandmother or the whoever the head of the culture is to be involved. They can be joined, they can be invited. So it is becoming a much more accepted version other than just the parents. Now it's broadened to all carers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're out of time, but sometimes carers, family members are caring for children. They don't have parental responsibility. It's impacting their ability to get government support and other things, bringing together so that parental responsibility can be signed over in a parenting plan as well as going to court. So that can be ways of helping families to reorganise so that the legalities align with the reality. But yeah, thank you so much, Geri. It's been fabulous to have you here representing yourself and your knowledge and really helping with some insights there as well. So thank you very much. Thank you everyone who's come and contributed. There's a little YouTube video. There's a link in there that I've just done of the best interest factors for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders for the not-for-profit I run Interact support, but it's not heavily branded. So it could be used for anyone who does want to share this information out, whether you're in the family law sector or in other areas. So feel free to make use of it as you would like to. Thank you.